So now, assuming that we've learned to do the intensive listening so that our brain can hear word endings, and that we've got some experience with shadowing so that we're on high alert and can start to really hear and to some degree comprehend, we want to flood our brain with a massive amount of extensive listening. Now, extensive listening means listening to hundreds or thousands of hours of Czech. And you should choose something that you enjoy. You could always get, once you're past the basic stages, a more advanced textbook, such as this one, Czech for Life, which is a fantastic textbook at the early intermediate levels. Even beyond that, actually, intermediate levels of Czech. And it has 2 DVDs with many hours of audio. And just like the Asimil book I showed, it has, for every lesson, in conversations and little passages in Czech. And for all of these, it has the audio. So you can read them, follow along, listen to the audio, listen more than you read. And importantly, unlike most textbooks, it isn't just one sentence at a time. If you just listen to one sentence, you'll only get any good at listening to staccato, individual sentences, then a break, and then another sentence in the next part of the book. Instead, these dialogues get you used to real life, where things last longer and you've got sentences relating to each other and there's a story building up. But the problem with textbooks, I mean, that's a good textbook, but the problem with them is that firstly, they're quite artificial. They're invented for the purposes of teaching. So they may not be the most realistic conversations. But secondly, they can be a bit boring, to be honest. It seems like work. And you're far better working with something that you enjoy, something that you like. So here's an example. When I was starting to get a little bit better at Czech, I decided instead of just sticking with textbooks, I'd move on to native materials. So for example, here is the whole series of books about Narnia, children's books essentially, maybe for teenagers. So here's the first volume, The Magician's Nephew. And what I did was to also get for everyone the English version. So these are the exact same books of The Magician's Nephew. And I found that having both the English and the Czech really helped. Not necessarily just because I could read both, but because I could now employ a technique called, I've lost focus. Okay, I could now employ a technique that I learned on the How to Learn Any Language website called the listening reading method. And what you do is you need to have the unabridged audio. You need to have the recordings for this. So I would buy books for which only the recordings are available. For example, one of my favorite books, The Godfather by Mario Puzo. I have it in Czech and in English, and I bought 19 CDs, which is 21.5 hours of that book in Czech. And I'm going to show you how to use these ideas together. If you try and just listen to the Czech, and you can hear word endings and maybe know a few words, the fact may be that it's too advanced for you. It's just too advanced, and so 90% of the words, or whatever percentage it is, you will not understand. And that can be very off-putting. So the listening reading method says just keep listening extensively, just keep listening and keep listening and listening in Czech, but at the same time that you're listening to the Czech version, read the English version. And this will mean that as your brain is listening, it will start to understand the meaning as well. So here is just a little bit from chapter 1. Let me see if I can get this to focus. Okay.
Díl první. Amerigo Bonasera seděl v síni 3. newyorského trestního soudu a čekal na spravedlnost, na pomstu mužům, kteří tak surově ublížili jeho dceři a kteří se jí pokusili zneuctít. Soudce, mohutný chlapík hrozivého vzrůstu, si vysoukal rukávy černého taláru, jako by se chystal fyzicky potrestat ty dva mladíky, co stáli před jeho křeslem.
Okay.
So the
idea there is that at least if you understand a few of the words from your early studying, maybe just even 1 in 10, you can always find your place in the textbook, and for those words that you don't understand, you'll grasp the meaning of them because your eyes can just quickly look into the English version of the text. And this way, if you find the books that you enjoy, this is one of my favorites, The Godfather, you can just read for hours a day because it doesn't seem like work. Well, and your brain is automatically connecting what you read in English with what you hear in Czech. And exactly the same with the book Švejk, which I showed you here in Czech. I have exactly the same book in English. So here is, if I can get it to focus, the writing is quite small here. Okay.
Tak nám zabili Ferdinanda, řekla posluhovačka panu Švejkovi, který opustil před lety vojenskou službu, když byl definitivně prohlášen vojenskou lékařskou komisí za blba, živil se prodejem psů, ošklivých, nečistokrevných oblud, kterým padělal rodokmeny.
So there was the first paragraph. Now, if you find that you don't even understand 1 in 10 words, find an easier book. And like I started out with those Narnia books, that was great to start out with. And as my understanding of Czech increased, I could then move on to The Godfather and then on to Švejk. And so now I can work with, well, I've got a whole host of books here in both Czech and in English. So this listening reading method, then you can go on to a later stage, which is where you're listening to just the Czech and reading just the Czech, not the English anymore. And because you've already listened to the English version, you should be able to then understand a lot more. And what you might want to do is underline the words that you don't understand. For example, when I was reading The Magician's Nephew, I highlighted with my highlighter pen the words that I didn't understand. You can see. And then later on, those words that I was particularly interested in there, I would look them up in a dictionary and write some notes on the top. Okay, and you'll see that in this case, I was probably getting maybe 4 words, 3, 4, 5 words per page that I didn't know. And when you've reached that level, this is called comprehensible input. When you understand something like 90% of a page, or higher, 95%, that's considered enough to be able to read at that level comfortably. When you've done that, it's time to move on to a harder text. So that's it. The LR method helps you flood your brain with masses of content and build up comprehension of it, and you will find that you have picked up vocabulary naturally without having to study lists of random vocabulary in the back of a textbook, which is dull, really, really dull. Instead, you hear the words many, many, many times, and your brain, by doing this listening reading method, will comprehend many of those words, so that then you can go back to the book written in its native language, or, well, in this case in Czech actually. It's not the native language, but in your target language, Czech here. And you'll find that you understand a lot more, and you can then just pick out the few words that you don't understand for later study. And you've then tied all of the abilities together to read, to hear, to comprehend, to learn words, and so on. Wonderful. Okay, thanks very much. Bye-bye.